Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy, brother Hush. Oh, look at who I got with me. I got some heavy hitters. I think I got the heaviest hitter from U Beta Phi. Okay, I had to bring the founder on for this show, and I had to bring on, listen, 3 decades of experience. That's all I'm gonna say. 3 decades of experience, okay? And I'm talking about at a high level. But let me just introduce who I got on today's show. Listen, we're celebrating the Navy's birthday, okay? Okay, October 13th, 1775, the United States Navy was established, all right, as a fighting force, and they've been a big fighting force since then. And I'm not talking about the Army Navy game, all right. But listen, we have with us the founder of Mu Beta Phi Military Fraternity Incorporated, Gary Ammons. That's what I'm talking about. And then, yeah, all right, you got your flowers. We got to talk about my next guest, Len Remias. Now, listen, let me tell you something about Len. Len is a military liaison out in Norfolk, Virginia. The man, Len, what was that number you told me? How many transitioning service members annually?
200,000 annually, but here in Hampton Roads area, 15,000 approximately.
15,000 service members. He's impact. We're going to get into the show right now. All right. So I'm going to just be quiet and let me throw out this first question. Okay. And let's start with Len. All right. We got to listen, Gary, we got to start with guests coming into the Final Life show first. Okay.
Absolutely.
So Len, a little bit about your military history, man. 3 to 5 minutes, 3 decades, serving at a high level. Why'd you join the Navy? What did you do during your military career? Go for it, brother.
All right. Well, first of all, from my experience, I mean, it always starts with, your upbringing. My father, my dad, retired Master Chief. Okay, so I was raised. I was the oldest of 5 kids. Typical Filipino American story. He enlisted in 1960 from the Philippines to try to make a better life for himself, raise a family, and he joined. And at that time, if you all remember, segregation, right? So they all came in as stewards, pretty much were responsible for cleaning the staterooms of the officers. And he was assigned to an aircraft carrier, came in at the height of the Vietnam War era, and had many experiences. But he did 30 years. So I was blessed with being able to grow up here in the States, born in California. Pretty much he was stationed here in Norfolk, Virginia, pretty much for most of his tour. So I had the opportunity to go to college, Old Dominion University, Navy ROTC program for my officer session program. And from then on out, when you're having fun, right, in the service, you continue to stay, and then 30 years goes by. I served as a surface warfare officer, retired, Navy captain. But one of the highlights of my tours, as you probably see over on my left shoulder, is my guidon from Provincial Reconstruction Team Kunar Province, Afghanistan. I served a year on the ground at a time when the Navy, Air Force, and the other services were supporting, the Army, but doing all the non-kinetic stuff, like helping to build governance, development, and reconstruction in Afghanistan. That was about a decade ago. And so I have an appreciation, across the board for all services. My uncle was in the Air Force, and like I said, I served, the Army under the 82nd and 101st for that 1 year. And then, but career-wise, traditionally, as a SWO, surface warfare officer on board aircraft carriers, cruisers, destroyers, frigates, all over the world. That's my story in terms of career progression. I retired in 2018 and went into the IT space, and have been in this job about 2 years now as the military affairs liaison, where I work closely with service members now, as well as their families and military spouses.
That is beautiful. That is beautiful. All right. Listen, Imperial Brother Fatal. Bam.
Yeah,
Let's see if you can. Len did it great. We know he's led at the highest of levels. He just went bam, 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 bullet, 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 like an OER, just a beautiful sounding OER. You know, for all y'all that don't know what that is, just look it up. OER. That's the word of the
You gotta
day.
have an
OER.
acronym, right? You gotta have an acronym.
I gotta have an acronym. Go ahead, Imperial Brother Fatal.
Yeah, I can tell you right now, I can't top that, but it's all good. But yeah, so for me, I was a Philadelphia born and bred young man. I served 22 years in the enlisted ranks of the United States Navy. I was what you called an aviation electronics technician. So I basically supported the F-18, the A-4, and the F-14 aircraft with their maintenance and the avionics systems. I was primarily I was a communication navigation technician, and then as I moved up in rank, I moved into our production control division where I managed the maintenance department for their production efforts. Then moved on a little bit to foreign military sales for Naval Aviation Enterprise, where we managed a budget and a capital fund of $32 million. Then as I moved up into my senior enlisted ranks, I went over to the Navy schoolhouse and was what you call a learning standards officer, which we did the curriculum development for aviation maintenance across the fleet, basically. And then as I moved into my retirement, I still serve working for the Navy and for the Coast Guard as a military liaison myself with Lockheed Martin, where I basically work on, I'm the go-between for the customer and the Navy's needs and the Coast Guard's needs when it comes to new development of communication navigation equipment and maritime support. And that's what I currently do now. I love it. I love still being able to serve our nation as well as our armed forces. And that's me.
Man, I can't even come a quarter. I just did 13 years. I'm still growing. I'm still trying to find myself. Now, let's start with Len, and then Gary, you're gonna follow up afterwards with this question. You both served over 2 decades, Len over 3. Lessons learned during your time in uniform. This is a very pointed question. What was the most important thing that you learned during your time in uniform? Len, then Gary. Go ahead, Len.
Yeah, that's a great question. And you talked about lessons learned. And, no one completes a successful career and not, somewhere along the way stumble, right? And going back to kind of John Maxwell's philosophy about failing forward, there were many, many times, many challenges along the way where, I failed essentially. But, when you pick up and you just press on, persevere, right, and move forward, I think that's critical. But one of the key takeaways, part of having been in command, you go through this exercise, when you go through the command pipeline and having to develop, kind of a command philosophy, right? I mean, every commander, every command, whether you're a first sergeant or a command sergeant major, command master chief, it's how are you going to lead the troops? How are you going to lead sailors? And you kind of think about what's your philosophy. And a lot of it, you kind of take away the good and bad from the leaders that you've had, right? And I think throughout my career, a lot of, like I said, many experiences and lessons, but the key takeaways are essentially, 3 things. And it just comes down to number one, I think really trying to be your best, right? Being your best, and then helping your shipmates or your battle buddies be their best. And finally, the unit, ship, organization will ultimately be their best, right? So it just comes down to essentially that, being that model, that role model, keeping true to your, our Army or Navy core values, honor, courage, commitment. Gary, you'll talk to that as well. But, I think if you're aligned with the organization and you basically accept that, as your values, okay, and then try to, not just what's on paper, but live it out, right? That's what's key, I think, to success, and some of the things I take away from my 30-year career.
Gary?
Yeah, and Len, he hit it right on the head with a lot of that. I can tell you from my experience, 20 years, it's always an evolving and changing atmosphere in the military. And one of the things that I can say, one of my biggest takeaways that I've always tried to preach to my sailors and my chief petty officers is to be flexible, always be flexible. When you're in the military, you live in a constantly changing environment. Op tempo, mission objectives, they're always changing. And what you find in enlisted ranks is sailors don't like change much. It's kind of like, you give them a target to hit and, they just want to continue to march forward with that. But then at some points you have to change. And a lot of times sailors don't like to change. So you have to kind of coach them and keep them, motivated, but you got to also understand that to be flexible because things will change as you're moving forward. And Len, he hit it right on the head as well with the whole, failing thing. You find yourself, especially in a leadership position, you find yourself failing more than you do winning. And that's okay because they should always be teachable moments. And that's how you become successful as you go on. So it's okay to fail at times. The thing is, don't be terminal in that failure. Learn from it, evolve from it, move forward, and make it better. And then one last piece I'll speak to in regards to that is one of my old mentors, a master chief that really brought me up through the ranks. And he had this motto, and it stuck with me for the last 20 years. And it was never let the first time be the first time you do something. And if you catch the message there, it's like, you got an objective to hit, but you need to be practicing it, be repetitive in those processes. That way, when you do get out there and do it for the first time, it's done at a level of professionalism, and you're representing the branch of military you serve in the best means that you know how.
Wow, beautiful, beautiful. So, this is a show that we're celebrating the Navy's birthday. And it's always good to have cake. It's always good to have cake. But sometimes when the cake is so good, you bite your tongue and it hurts. And that's my way of segueing into this next question, because we all go through a couple of things in the military. If somebody were to tell me, hey, my military career is all daisies and roses and fun sunflowers and Teletubbies, I would say you a liar. We all go through some things, and we all have to find our way, how we overcome those obstacles. So my next question, and we'll start back with you, Len, is, if you can share a story or a situation, or just, what sort of obstacles did you encounter during your time in service, and how did you overcome them?
Okay, yeah, there's a great one, and you try to reflect back to your time, especially like mine in a career. But I think really, when it comes down to it, you have to look inside yourself, and some of those things that are, inhibiting you or preventing you from being your best, like I talked about, is you. When you look in the mirror. And so you got to recognize your strengths and your weaknesses, and you mentioned OER, and it's like that. When you go up before your counseling, it's like, okay, give me 3 ups, 3 downs, about yourself, right? But when it comes, in my situation, always trying to strive for perfection, and you'll realize that there's nothing perfect, right? But one of my I guess greatest takeaways is just being willing and able to accept that, hey, you're not perfect, and you got people around you where you can rely on to help you, whether it's informing a decision, right? And it's not just yourself that has to take this burden or this weight to be able to perform. And that's that's why we have a good team concept, because we rely on our battle buddies and our shipmates to kind of help us through. And I think that was my greatest challenge. When I was really young as a junior officer, I had a captain that told me, like, look, Len, every time you make a report, I was a chief engineer on a ship, okay, and I always wanted to report up the chain of command. He said, you're always trying to package everything so you give me a complete, nice, pretty report, but don't be afraid to come tell me that, hey, something's broke and this is kind of like the plan, or you're going to get it fixed. But I always felt like I had to, find a solution before I presented, any kind of like bad news. And what I took away from that was, number one is, there's a couple things in there. Is, hey, communicating, be a great communicator. How do you become an effective communicator? We're reporting constantly up, down, across the chain of command and sharing your knowledge, right? One of the things and so I learned some of these lessons early on. So when you take it into the battlefield, like in Afghanistan, where information and intel is so critical. And I remember going in one of the tactical operations center, I saw, some quote, right, which was so true, because prior to that, I had a commanding officer that always had share your knowledge. But it basically came down to, what do I know? What do I need to know, and who needs to know it? Is essentially, and it's so true. I mean, you look at every single organization today, even in the city, where communication is like one of the biggest. When you look on those climate surveys or organizational surveys, communication is always the challenge. It's like one of the number one issues in any kind of organization. So I would just let everyone know in the audience is to take a look at yourself and try to understand what your areas of improvement need to be, and then you find ways to work at it, right?
All right, Gary.
Yeah. So for me, I think the biggest thing that I can speak to is that point of failure. That was one of my driving and motivating factors throughout my career, is the fear of failure, and not so much failure for me, but letting down people that I had responsibility over. As chiefs, as senior enlisted leaders, our job is to take care of sailors, but also put the command in the best position to succeed. And so my fear was always failing. So it kind of drove me to, one, better myself personally and professionally, but also to put to take the onus off of me, but also delegate and help junior sailors under me evolve, and then take my position. That's basically how I looked at that. And so that's how I chose to lead. Nelson Mandela, and I'm sure you've heard this motto inside Mu Beta Phi as well, is lead from the back and allow others to believe that they are in front, right? And so there's a message there, which is, allow that person to grow as a leader, allow them to grow as a person, learn to get through how to basically overcome their adversities and their problems, with their career and stuff like that, but help put them on a path to succeed. And that's the way I've always tried to instill in my sailors, but also try to lead myself, and kind of do like a self-reflection, is pretty much being, am I an effective leader? And making sure that, my people are listening to me, and they're taking the points that I'm giving them, and they're utilizing them to the best of their skill set, and they become the better leader for themselves as well.
Wow, that's great advice, gentlemen. Which now that segues into this question, because I feel like if you can overcome something and you can take those lessons learned, that will only make you a more effective leader. And I feel that there are a lot of organizations that they want to help serve veterans. They want to do good work in their communities and help veterans and their families and their spouses and their loved ones, but they miss the mark. What do you think? And this is, for you gentlemen, this is your opinion. What do you think organizations can do to better serve their local veteran community. And not only that, if you can add a little bit more into, into your responses, what have you seen in the veteran community field as far as organizational failure? You know, Len?
Yeah. Well, I mean, number one, I mean, just with anything, right? In order to affect change, you got to know what the problem is, right? I mean, so defining the problem is always the first step. And a lot of people want to just start throwing out all kinds of, recommendations and solutions without even asking, for example, where are the gaps, with veterans? I mean, if we're talking about, for example, like workforce, right, issues, um, what is prohibiting veterans from finding, meaningful and satisfying employment, as opposed to just look at, okay, here's the path you got to go along, and the checklist, but yet, you end up finding out, like, well, how many people aren't happy in their jobs. And I know we're all familiar with the transition assistance process, but there's just a tendency, to count those numbers, but not really solving what the real issue is. And so I think, I mean, in order to affect positive change, number one, just like any organization, you have to conduct a survey, you have to ask questions, you have to be, boots on the ground, knowing, whether it's at the deck plate level, right, or on the ground, surveying, just asking, right, first, and then trying to then identify some, some potential solutions to go ahead and execute. Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of what we're working here. When I talk to you about the workforce piece, is just trying to understand that in terms of what are the outcomes we're trying to achieve. I talk to service members every day, and a lot of them have the same theme about, when you ask them, what do you want to do, after your post-military career? And a lot of them are like, well, I don't really know. What's your passion? I don't know. And so I think having, and there's plenty in this space, right, of transitioning service members, lots of, whether it's in the private, public sector, or just nonprofits that are trying to help veterans. But I think number one, how can we affect a positive change is just to understand, right, and listen to what our transitioning active duty service members, their families, veterans who have already been, in the workforce, what are those challenges? What are those problems that they're facing? In terms of in the space of, for example, unemployment and underemployment.
Right. Gary?
Yeah. So I'm just going to kind of piggyback a little bit off of Lynn here, and just simply say it's about knowing your audience. You need to know, one, who you're helping, what the deficit is, what the problem is, and are you capable of giving them relevant assistance, right? And so I speak from the aspect of, like, let's just say the veteran affairs or the veteran assistance. You would be surprised how many veterans you meet that don't know anything about veteran benefits, and what do they have at their toolbox for assets. And so for us, and I'm speaking for the military fraternity side of it right now, one of those things is you have to understand your mission and vision statement. And I think that's where a lot of like-minded organizations kind of fall to the wayside with certain things, which is maintaining and sustaining that mission vision part of it. And if your organization that say you're about helping veterans, well, okay, are we helping veterans? And are we making an effective change and help in that veteran community? And so, for Mu Beta Phi, for us, our job really is about educating in supporting that veteran community. If you're a veteran that has no idea about veteran benefits, okay, well, here's what you have available to you, and here's how you achieve those benefits. And so that's one of the main ways that we help veterans in that aspect. But also from that homeless veterans piece is, finding those capabilities to get them, sustained housing, food, nourishment, garments, things of that nature, something that can help get them on their feet so they can be an active participant in the community themselves and get back on their feet. So it's really about knowing your audience, knowing who you're helping, knowing who you're dealing with, and which ways you can help them, achieve their goals.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So guys, we're going to end off with this last question because it is the Navy's birthday. Funniest Navy story. somebody listen, my funniest Navy story was me deploying to Djibouti, Camp Lemonnier, and they were like, yes, 2 drink minimum. I was like, ooh, yay, okay, I'm gonna still drink ginger ale. So thank you, Navy, when you go down range. I mean, for you guys served. Oh, wow. And Len is like, thanks, Greg, for letting me know again how long my service was. And Gary too, over 2 decades, over 3 decades. How do you celebrate your service as a member of one of the most premier aquatic battle force components in the history of humanity? Len, how do you celebrate, your time of service in the Navy?
That's a tough question. So how do I celebrate my time in the Navy? My service. Well, I think number one, I'm not like a big, into crowds and being social. I mean, I kind of keep to myself. But I think what's important is that, just like you talked about, so it's the Navy's birthday, right? We're really big on legacy and tradition, and so, for example, when you meet, or work with veterans, right? You get together, you have camaraderie, you understand where each of you are coming from. So I think that bonding, let's just take the city alone. That's one of the toughest challenges, and kind of the things that, when you talk about what do you learn as a veteran? Well, I learned that, working in a civilian environment, you don't have that camaraderie, that bond. So you have to try to identify, kind of like, where's my tribe? Who are the veterans here, right? That understand you. And so we kind of have a little vet net, right? Veteran network amongst our city employees. And we get together every now and then, imbibe at the local breweries. There's a lot of, if you guys come to Hampton Roads, there's a lot of local coastal Virginia type breweries here in Hampton Roads that have popped up. So just getting together, sharing stories, sea stories, war stories with each other, and I think that, for me personally, that's how I celebrate, right? And then there's obviously all the formal things that have to occur with my job, whether it's having an event. COVID has impacted a lot of the social events, maybe birthday balls, but hopefully we'll be getting back to that. So yeah, that's pretty much.
Gary?
Yeah, that question is great for this time of year because, I got to plug, congratulations to all the FY22 Chief Selects.
Oh,
so
yeah.
when you ask me that question, this is the perfect time of year for me. So I get to go harass new selects, and try to get them up to speed, So, but in all honesty, I think for me, like a lot of the balls, the Navy balls, the Chief Petty Officer balls, that keeps me connected and some of the things that I like to do to have fun. But also the fact that I work still with the Navy and the Coast Guard, that still keeps me entrenched with the military side of the house, and being able to go to functions and things of that nature. So that's what pretty much is satisfying for me.
Nice. Shameless plug time before we go. Len, where can people find you, and find veteran resources out there in Norfolk? Plug it.
Yeah, I mean, hit me up on LinkedIn, Len Remias. Look up City of Norfolk. Go to my website, or my section, Military Affairs, Military and Veterans Affairs. I'll be happy to anyone coming down to the 757. Look me up.
I like how he's like 757 represent veteran space, yo. Got to get you a shirt, 757 veterans. Listen, I'm gonna let you do it. Imperial Brother Fatal, that I do it every show. I plug, and you see it in big letters. But I have to say, as the founder of the organization, it's time for you to throw the website where people can find us.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So for me, Beta Phi, I'm gonna simply say you can find us in the community. You won't find us on social media going back and forth. You'll see us in the community doing our best to help. If you're interested in the organization, obviously you can go to our website at www.mbphi-kings2017.org, and that's mbphi-kings2017.org.
See, he knows every show that I do that, Len. I'll be like, yo, www. Dot.
Yeah.
and I put it on the screen anyway. It's on the screen. I'm gonna probably still keep it up just for funds. But yes, thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Len, for everything. Thank you for your service. Thank you for everything that you do with all of the thousands upon thousands upon thousands of transitioning service members in your local area. And of course, I mean, Imperial Brother Fatal, you built Mu Beta Phi. I mean, look at my landscape. It's beautiful. Ooh, gotta
I
be a
love it.
king. All right. So listen, happy birthday, U.S. Navy. All right. You've been going strong since 1775. You've got way more birthdays coming up. All right. So until then, tune in next time, everybody. Love you. Peace.
Peace.